In 1993, a video game got dragged in front of the United States Congress. Senators held up screenshots, advocates called it a threat against children, and one politician described it as, and I'm quoting directly here, electronic child molestation. That game was Mortal Kombat. And what happened next didn't just change one game, it changed every game that came after it. Every rating on every game box you've ever held exists because of what went down between 1992 and 1994. This is the full story. Let's get into it. Before I get into the chaos, I want to frame where gaming actually was in the fall of 1992. Because if you didn't live through it, it's kind of hard to understand just how different the landscape was. Nintendo owned the living room. The SNES was in millions of homes across America. Parents trusted it. It was a safe choice. Family friendly, kid approved. Nintendo had worked hard to build that reputation, and they protected it fiercely. Sega was the challenger, louder, edgier, always pushing. Their whole marketing strategy was built around being the thing Nintendo wouldn't let you have. Sega does what Nintendo don't. Wasn't just a slogan, it was a philosophy. And then there were arcades, dark, loud quarters. This is where the rules were different. Arcade games had always pushed further than what you could get at home, and by 1992, fighting games were becoming the genre that pushed hardest. Street Fighter II had already shown that competitive one-on-one fighting was a phenomenon. Arcades were packed, the genre was exploding. And then Mortal Kombat showed up, and it looked like nothing else. Where Street Fighter had illustrated animated characters, Mortal Kombat had digitized photographs of real people, real martial artists, moving in real space, hitting each other with real force. It had weight to it, a texture. It looked like it was happening. And the violence was not subtle about what it was. Decapitation, spine extraction, hearts ripped out of chests. This wasn't implied, it was shown, right there on the screen. In an era where game violence was cartoon plumbers jumping on turtles, Mortal Kombat was something parents genuinely were not prepared for. So here's where it gets interesting. Mortal Kombat was coming to home consoles. Both Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis were getting versions. And Nintendo and Sega made completely opposite decisions about what that meant. Nintendo required changes, significant ones. The blood was replaced with gray sweat. Fatalities were sanitized. No ripped spines, no decapitations. Sub-Zero's iconic spine rip became a freeze. The game was there, the characters were there, but whatever made Mortal Kombat had been scrubbed out of it. Sega did the opposite. They shipped it with the blood, with a catch. You had to enter a code to unlock it. ABA, right? ACABA. If you knew the code, you got the real game. And kids, well, they found that code, obviously. It was in every magazine, on every playground, passed around like currency. The blood code was the thing that fall, and it did something that Nintendo didn't expect. It made the Genesis version the definitive version, the real version, the version that everybody wanted. Sega's Genesis sales spiked significantly. Retailers reported that kids were specifically asking for the Genesis version because of the blood. Nintendo had tried to protect their brand, and instead, they handed Sega a marketing win. The edgy choice had beaten the responsible choice in a sales chart. And here's the thing parents didn't realize in that moment. When they bought the Genesis version for their kid, they were buying the version with the spine rips, because nobody on the sales floor was explaining blood codes to parents in 1993. That's the thing that lit the fuse. Parents found out. Not all at once, but gradually. Christmas morning, a friend's house, a sleepover, and the reaction was not quiet. Gaming magazines covered the controversy extensively. The blood code, the SNES censorship decision, the sales numbers. This was mainstream news, not just gaming news. And that attention reached Washington, D.C. faster than anyone in the industry expected. So now we get to the part of the story where Congress gets involved, and I want to be crystal clear before I frame this. This wasn't the first time America had done this, not even close. But we'll come back to that. On December 9th, 1993, Senator Joseph Lieberman of Connecticut and Senator Herb Kohl of Wisconsin convened a formal Senate hearing on video game violence. They called it a joint hearing. They brought in witnesses from the gaming industry, and they brought receipts. Lieberman's argument was direct. He described Mortal Kombat specifically as, quote, electronic child molestation. He showed footage of the spine rip on the Senate floor. He argued that children were being exposed to gratuitous violence with no warning, no context, and no parental guidance system in place. And he wasn't entirely wrong. About the lack of a warning system, at least. There was genuinely no rating system, no label that said, this game contains a guy ripping another guy's spine out. The gap, well, it was there. Night Trap was also brought into the hearing as evidence. A Sega CD game in which players had to protect sorority girls from vampires by triggering traps. Lieberman held it up as an example of predatory, dangerous content aimed at children. By modern standards, it's genuinely comical how mild it looks, but in 1993, the optics were not great. But this is what I want you to hold on to, because this is a part of the story that some people just skip over. This exact panic and this exact pattern, this had happened before, multiple times. You see, America has a very specific reflex when a new medium gets popular with young people. In the 1950s, it was comic books. Psychiatrist Frederick Wortham wrote a book called Seduction of the Innocent, arguing that comics were corrupting American youth, promoting violence, and causing juvenile delinquency. Congress held hearings. The comic book industry created a self-regulatory rating system called the Comics Code Authority to avoid government intervention. Sound familiar? In 1985, just 8 years before the Mortal Kombat hearings, it was rock music. The Parents Music Resource Center, led by Tipper Gore, argued that explicit lyrics in rock and metal were corrupting children. Congress held hearings. Dee Snider, of Twisted Sister, entering in a way only he could, sat in front of senators and defended his music. The music industry responded with a parental advisory sticker you still see on albums today. Comics, music, video games, different decades, it's the same script. And in each case, the industry faced a choice. Fight it out, or come up with a system before the government came up with one for them. Howard Lincoln, Nintendo's chairman, testified before the committee. His argument was essentially, we already policed ourselves. We required changes to Mortal Kombat. We have standards. He positioned Nintendo as the responsible actor, which was true, and also slightly awkward, given that Nintendo would quietly publish Killer Instinct the following year. Sega's Edward Volquine took a different approach. He argued that Sega had already implemented their own voluntary rating system, the Video Game Rating Council, and that it was working. He defended the Blood Code. He argued that parental responsibility, not governmental intervention, was the answer. He was not wrong about the rating system part, but Sega's VRC didn't survive what came next. Because the industry got the message. Either create a unified rating system, or Congress will create one for you. In September of 1994, the Entertainment Software Ratings Board officially launched. Founded by the Interactive Digital Software Association, that's now the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association, with the specific goal of giving parents a clear, standardized way of telling them what was in a game before they bought it. Every rating you've ever seen on a game box came from this moment. E for everyone, T for teen, M for mature, AO for adults only. These 5 letters, in the corner of billions of game cases, exist because of a Senate hearing about Mortal Kombat. Let that land for a second. The system wasn't perfect on launch. It took time for retailers to enforce it. It took time for parents to understand it. But it gave the industry something it desperately needed, a credible, industry-run alternative to government regulation. And it held. And here's the part that gets genuinely wild. While all of this was happening, while Congress was holding hearings, while the industry was scrambling to create a rating system, Midway had already started work on Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat 2 hit arcades in 1993, the same year as the Senate hearings. More characters, more fatalities, more blood, more babalities, friendships, and stage fatalities. More of everything. Midway didn't slow down, they doubled down. And when Mortal Kombat 2 came to home consoles in 1994, the same year the ESRB launched, it shipped with blood enabled by default on both SNES and Genesis. No code required. Nintendo approved it. Same box, same rating label, same content. Available on Nintendo's platform. The company that had testified about responsible standards had, by 1994, released the uncut sequel on their own console. The ESRB rating system had made that possible, because now there was a label on the box. The label was doing the work Nintendo's internal censors used to do. Which is actually how the system is supposed to work. Not to ban content, but to label it. To give parents the information they didn't have before. And that distinction matters, because what came next proved that the system could hold, even when the content kept escalating. Alright, I want to zoom out here, because I think we're in a genuinely interesting moment to be telling this story. Mortal Kombat 2 is in theaters right now. A major studio sequel. $100+ million production. Rated R. Marketed to adults. Reviewed in mainstream press. Merchandise at Target. The franchise that senators called a danger to children in 1993 is now one of the most commercially successful entertainment properties in the world. And I think that arc is worth sitting with, because the game didn't win by being tame. It won by the rating system proving that adults could choose what they wanted to consume, and parents had tools to make informed decisions for their kids. The 1995 film came out just 1 year after the ESRB launched, rated PG-13. A franchise that had been called unfit for children was now in multiplexes with a rating that said 13-year-olds could walk in without a guardian. And the 2026 sequel, rated R, in theaters this week. 31 years between those two films. The franchise aged, the audience aged, and the rating system held the whole thing together. The next time a game boots up and you see that M for mature screen, that warning you've probably skipped through 1,000 times, remember that someone had to fight Congress to make that screen exist, that it replaced a system where there was no warning at all. Gaming is now the largest entertainment industry on Earth. Bigger than film, bigger than music. And it got here in part because the people who built it in 1993 and 1994 found a way to regulate themselves before the government did it for them. The ESRB wasn't a concession, it was a shield. For me, this is one of those stories that makes you realize how close we came to things going in a possibly different direction. If Congress had stepped in with actual legislation, actual rating requirements, the trajectory of gaming changes. Maybe the violence lowers. Maybe some games never get made. Maybe the indie scene isn't what it is today. And Mortal Kombat, it didn't just survive the hearings, it forced the industry to grow up. And then it kept going. As per usual, I'd love to see where everybody lands on this. Do you think ESRB does its job and helps parents make informed decisions for their kids? Or do you think it's just a sticker at this point? Make sure you drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Well, everybody, as per usual, this has been Steak. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It's a little longer than normal. But, as always, follow, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, an awesome week, and hopefully enjoy the new Mortal Kombat movie out now. Peace!